Boston College had Georgia Tech on the ropes, but some bad defense and difficult plays down the stretch cost BC.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day, part of the Locked On Network, the #1 sports podcast network. We enjoy each and every show that we have done for you. My name's AJ Black of Eagle Insider, part of the 247 Network. I've been covering Boston College for over a decade. If you're looking for Boston College news, analysis, and details on your Eagles, this is the right place to be. So this is what pain feels like. On today's show, we're going to look at a Boston College game that they had against a ranked team but could not finish it off. We'll look at the defense that caused issues, and Dylan Lonergan has you sucking on that hopium again. We're going to get into all of that on today's show. So let's dive in first. Boston College, this felt different because BC, throughout this game, they had their chances. They were up at one point late in the game. They went into halftime tied with a team that I thought they had no chance of stopping. But two big plays on defense allowed them to force field goals instead of giving up touchdowns. That was a big turn for Boston College. Additionally, we saw Dylan Lonergan look like the Dylan Lonergan we saw those first 3 weeks. He looked fantastic out there, throwing for over 380 yards. The running attack was there. Turbo Richard had 2 long touchdown runs. Jordan McDonald had a touchdown run. The excitement and vibes were high. I have to say, just game aside, this would have been such a big win for BC football. Records aside, you would have been 2-10 still, or 2-9, but having a ranked win, showing that all that hard work that you've done all season, all of the development, all of the positive, push forwards had actually paid off for BC. But in the end, you end up with another loss. And I got to say, it's been a while since I felt the soul-crushing loss, because that's exactly what this felt like. Like, you had this game. You were right there at the end. All you had to do was stop Georgia Tech on that last drive, and you couldn't do it. That was the game. That was the story of the game right there. BC allowed over 600 yards, 628 yards, giving up 371 to Haynes King through the air and 257 through the ground. If I were to tell you that that was what the defense did in this game, you probably would have went up to me and said, hey, AJ, they got blown out in this game. The fact that they lost by 2 points is kind of crazy because they did not make any stops on defense. I don't think did we even see Georgia Tech's punter? I don't think we did. I think we only saw, touchdowns and then field goals. Yeah, they punted. They never punt. They punted twice. Sorry, excuse me. There were 2 punts in this game. Didn't feel like they punted at all. But that's the way this defense was running. They tried to make some stops. They didn't. I think the big thing that BC lacked in this game were the splash plays on defense, because that could have caused some issues. But what we saw was what we said on the show all week, is that Georgia Tech is really fast. They are really, really fast. And you got guys like Eric Rivers and that running back that they had, Jamal Haynes and Malachi Hosley and, Malik Rutherford, right? Malik Rutherford had an untouched touchdown. Like, you saw a lot of that. The big credit, though, goes to the offense, I think, who showed up in a big way. I thought when we talked with Mitch this week that the BC Georgia Tech defense was going to be solid. They looked almost as helpless as BC's defense. A little less because BC's offense wasn't as explosive. But BC had over 500 yards on offense. You had, let me pull it up. You had Dylan Lonergan with 362 passing yards. You had 175 yards on the ground. Like, they were dynamic. This is what we've been hoping for all season. You had great catches by Lewis Bond and Kalen Chudzinski and Jeremiah Franklin. Like, they were showing up. And I think, as they kind of battled back and forth in this game, I was hoping for the players and for the current student body and for the season ticket holders that this was going to end with a field storming, that, all those fans and those seniors out there, they got a chance to do that, and it just didn't end that way. Once you saw on that final drive, Georgia Tech get past the 50-yard line, and then you saw them, like, they basically were clinical with the way they could move that football, and they were moving and moving and moving, and BC couldn't stop them. And that was it. When you couldn't get those stops to get them off the field, that was a big issue. Now, there's some other things that we should talk about too. Let's talk about a wasted drive. I think that's an important thing to bring up here. As BC had momentum, they had a 2-score lead. I think it went down to 1 score on this drive. They put Luke McGowan out there. And I know there's some folks out there that really like Luke McGowan's play, and all the power to you. I'm not here to bash Luke McGowan. I'm just more wondering why, in like the real critical part of this game, did they remove Dawson Pugh and go to Luke McGowan, who had 2 catches all year, and then went to him twice? It didn't make a lot of sense to me. And that was basically nuking a drive that you had. So instead of doing what you had done well, which is get the ball to Lewis Bond, get the ball to Reed Harris, who also had 100+ yards, or run the football, you instead went to Luke McGowan, and it didn't work. And I'm not saying the first pass was his fault. That was on Dylan. Dylan threw it too high. But I didn't understand that. That one drive confused me, because if you got points there, look what happened. You probably could have, changed the outcome of this game. You probably, kept Haynes King on the sideline a little bit longer. There's a lot of things there. So I really was not a big fan of that. If I'm going to be critical about something, that drive really got me going. So that's an overview of that. Now, let's talk in a moment. I want to talk about how this game reflects on where BC is at, because there's some thoughts on that too, and we'll get into that in just a moment. It's the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win on Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Boston College, hey, look it. I've done this for months now, and some of them I'm picking other teams. I have too many BC players to pick. I could pick Lewis Bond because he had, he's the all-time leader in receptions. Turbo Richards, multiple touchdowns, almost 400 passing yards from Dylan Lonergan. Who do I pick? I'm going to go with Turbo Richards in this one with multiple touchdowns. He looked great. And when the pressure was on, he came through. He had that touchdown that looked like it could have been the game winner. And if you've been watching week after week, Turbo's performance wasn't a fluke. And just like Turbo Richard delivered for the Boston College Eagles, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. Locked on Boston College here live at Alumni Stadium. This is AJ Black. It's our final live podcast at Alumni. It was senior day, and a shout out to all the BC seniors on the team, on the marching band, the cheerleaders. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you all who have put your time and soul into this program. Now, you're now 2-10, or 2-9. Excuse me, 2-9. The season we already knew was over. You have one more game up. We have a bye next week. Isn't that fun? I can continue to complain about this because really I want to just get to the offseason. But what did this game tell us about Boston College? Well, it kind of goes into the same vein of what Bill O'Brien has been preaching all year, which is this team doesn't give up. Even after a huge beatdown last week by SMU, you saw this team go out there with pride and play their tails off for 4 quarters. That they brought the number 14 team in the country to the brink. And honestly, there was a lot you could say that they should have won this game. But what I'm saying here is you had a lot of the same players out there. This wasn't like they did anything drastically different. Like you saw, Quintayvius Hutchins was hurt. Owen McGowan, if you were watching, I don't know if you could see it on TV, but the poor guy was playing on one leg and he was hobbling around for most of the game. These guys were beaten and battered, and they put everything that they had into this game. That was very clear watching. They had a ton of pride in this game. And even if the results didn't show it, they were pushing for it. So that I thought was a big piece. I also saw some names and players step up and make some plays that I hadn't seen a whole lot of, recently. Whether it was Turbo Richard, like I just talked about him, he's had a rough couple weeks, but like that was the explosiveness I was hoping for all year. Now you play a defense that wasn't all that great, and he lit them up. I wish I saw a little bit more of him, but hey, I'm not going to complain because the way they were running this offense, they could do anything, and they were getting things going. Interestingly, on defense, you saw some of the younger players come up and make some plays. Kamori Dixon had he had just a cup of he just had a sip of in the league here kind of thing where he had a big sack. He had the one sack on Haynes King, and then he got hurt. Hopefully he's okay. I don't know what the injury was, but we didn't see him again. Once Dixon got hurt, we saw true freshman Griffin Collins out of Worcester Academy come in and play. And last I checked, he had like 6 tackles. I don't know. We'll have to wait to see what the film shows on how he played, but you threw a true freshman out there and he moved around pretty good. I thought that was something encouraging to watch for. Then, you saw the team just continue to battle. That was the thing that for me. Look, Georgia Tech scored at will at times during this game. There were times where they just could not get out of, BC could not stop them. Haynes King was too fast. He was too, there was the multi-directional, side-to-side stuff. I think that was kind of what BC struggled with because they didn't have the speed to stop it. But I saw a lot of those guys just trying. They were trying so hard out there. And, I think that's something to be said about that. Additionally, I kind of made a big deal of this earlier, but it was such a good sign to see Dylan Lonergan finding his groove. Georgia Tech's defense wasn't great, obviously, but we have not seen Lonergan with any sort of confidence to this point since. I mean, he's had pieces here and there, but what has been the big issue for BC? The not being able to get explosive plays. That's what Bill O'Brien's talking about this week. He said he doesn't want those 11-minute drives. He wants to be explosive. They had a number of them, both through the air and through the ground, and a lot of that had to do with Lonergan. Lonergan looked, for the future of this program, maybe he's the answer. Maybe it's going to be Shaker Rising. But the way he controlled that offense, the way he made throws, even when it was down to 11 seconds and they get the ball back, he looked composed. That is a huge plus for Boston College moving forward because I think the big concern right now I had going into the offseason was you're going into this offseason, would the struggles that Lonergan went through, would that impede his progress moving forward? And, the answer is not there yet, but this was a definite positive sign to show you that maybe he is heading in the right direction. And that even after those terrible games that he's had, he played nearly flawless in this game. No turnovers. He was smart with the football. He made some really good passes. Was he perfect? No, he had a few that he definitely probably would like back, but he was hitting his shots out there. So I really thought that was a positive because obviously, the big thing that I've said on this podcast is the quarterback position is super critical for the future of a program. I thought at the beginning of the season that, Lonergan was going to be such a upgrade, and then obviously that kind of fell apart. But to see him rebound and get himself to this point, because you have one more game left. You have a chance to win. You got your only chance to win another FBS game and to go prevent yourself from going 0 in the FBS. You got to be able to take advantage of that. And the way Lonergan looked today, when you're playing against a Syracuse team that has struggled big time, and they are the complete opposite of what Georgia Tech has. Syracuse has no offense, right, to speak of. Once they lost Angeli, they've been struggling to move that football. So there's a chance there. And having Lonergan throw the way he does gives you a little hope that going into Syracuse, maybe BC can finally get that win and go into the offseason with some sort of momentum. I know going 2-10 is not momentum. Believe me, I get that. But I'm saying that it's better than going 1-11. Let's just leave it at that. You need to have something. So I thought that was positive as well. I think when you're looking at the other pieces of this game moving forward, what did we see? Lewis Bond, we have to talk about him. I have to bring up Lewis Bond here because Lewis Bond broke Zay Flowers' reception record with his 201st reception to make him the all-time leader in receiving receptions for BC. I think he's got other records that are right on the brink too. He has been just so critical to this offense. You have a quarterback, and there's a great article by Trevor Haas on the Boston Globe, if you haven't read it yet, that has been every single year reliable, whether it's Tommy Castellanos or Emmett Moorhead or Grayson James or Dylan Lonergan. He's been the security blanket for every one of those quarterbacks. And it was great to see him, have that big moment. Will he be an NFL caliber wide receiver? It's going to be a lot on how he does in the combine, but he's done everything possible here at BC to put himself into that position, to be able to get himself ready for the NFL because he deserves it. Like, this is a guy that's tough as nails, that, good hands. I know he had a drop in this game, but he's got, I think he's really, really good. And, it stinks that he's going to end his career here on a negative note because he deserves more than that. But I think that was something also to bring up. Additionally, Reed Harris, again, had a big game. He had a touchdown catch and he had over 100 receiving yards. So that is another positive. Both him and Lonergan, I think really showed what the future of this team is going to be like. I think obviously going into this offseason, one of the big storylines is please keep Reed Harris in Boston College because he is so important to this offense. And hopefully other schools are not going to try to poach him and he likes it here because everything he says is that he likes it here. But, there's other factors always at play and we'll have to wait and see after a 1-11 or 2-10 team. It's, sometimes it's going to be challenging. So those were some of my big takeaways. Those were some of the things I have been looking at. In my final segment, I want to talk a little bit about Bill. Bill O'Brien had a big blow up in this game and a 15-yard penalty that cost BC. Did it really matter? I'll get into all of that in just a moment. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to go than get on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger playout. It keeps getting games exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets from your first $5 bet wins. You can be watching anything from the Celtics to the Lakers to the Pistons. You find the points you want, you go up and over or under, and then you can get your odds, your spreads. It's all there on FanDuel. You need to take advantage of that. So head to FanDuel.com right now to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Locked on Boston College, AJ Black here. And I want to shout out Brett Ryder and his amazing What's Up Trevor t-shirts that you saw us on Twitter wearing. Got to check these out. If you have not already, you can get them on Eagles Daily. Check them out. They are great. If you want some fun to end your season, go check those out. All of us writers, you can see it up on Twitter. We were having fun with that earlier. That's over on Eagles Daily, so check that out. Now, let's wrap things up. This is our final home game. BC wins one home game this season. Definitely not the way you would want to end, have a season go. Definitely not how I predicted, not how many people predicted. But now where does Boston College go from here? What is next for BC? You have a bye week, and I don't think there's going to be a whole lot coming out of that bye week that we're going to hear about. It's basically just survive in advance. I think guys are just going to get healthy. You saw Quintayvius Hutchins go down with upper leg injury. Owen McGowan could use a year off based off of how injured he looks. You guys got other guys get banged up. I'm guessing that we see Amari Jackson in the final game. He did not play today, and that would give him his fourth game, which would keep his red shirt. So I'm guessing we'll see him. Maybe we see Chuck Nato or Anya Nwisi, who also have 3 games. I think those guys could all come back against Syracuse. This is a chance to give one last go for a win. And it's against your rival. And against a coach that is very braggadocious, who loves to talk. And you get a chance for your second straight year to shut him up. I have no issue with Fran Brown talking. He's that's his deal, but this is a chance for BC to go there. My feeling after today's game is that BC is heading in the right direction. Again, it's close. You want to get wins. They didn't get a win here, but you need to start somewhere, and getting a win against Syracuse would be big. And then from there, it's moving on. How do you move on from the season? Is it changes that you make with the coaching staff? Are there certain coaches that just are not clicking with what Bill O'Brien wants to do? Is the game plan not working? Is the recruiting plan not working? How are they going to attack the transfer portal? Jeff Hafley had 1 year. Ironically enough, it was the same year that BC was terrible in 2022, just like this year, where he also tanked in the portal. I don't know if he went hard in it or what, but that year he didn't do well, and BC this year didn't do well in the portal, and look where things are at. They have to be able to hit better in the portal. That does not mean BC is going to go out there and get 5-star transfers. That's not going to happen. But you need to be able to bring guys into this program that are going to be able to contribute. You see some here and there, and I think what you'll see next year is a lot of the guys that Bill brought in this year are going to be much more effective next year. Guys like Favor Bate, Amir Johnson, Anya Nuisi if he's back, Jason Hewlett. Some of these guys, another year might get them to where they need to be. But we'll have to wait to see that and see who, he doesn't think fit, and maybe they move on as well before the end of next season. So that's going to be the next big piece. And it's going to be critical that they get this right. They need to get this right because, look, I'm not on the fire Bill O'Brien side. I'm not on the he's the savior of BC side right now. I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm in the prove it to me stage. And right now he needs to prove it. And that could be starting next week when they play Syracuse after Thanksgiving. If they can win that game, that gets me a little bit more positive moving forward. If they go out there and lay a stinker against Syracuse, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. But I think today's loss was a definite bummer. And I think that was one of the things that really stuck out to me about this before we head out. Getting your doors blown off by SMU, not really being competitive all that much against Clemson, getting your doors blown off by Pitt, leaves you kind of numb, right? Like we've just been getting beaten and beaten and beaten and beaten and beaten and beaten over and over again. And after so much of that, you just kind of like go numb to it. And it's just like you don't have an emotional reaction to it anymore because it just hurts so much. You just don't want to react to that way. This gave you that piece of hope. This felt like you were there, like you were about to witness something special. And just like everything else this year, it was ripped out of your grasp. It was just at, you could taste it. You were feeling it. You go back to that USC game, BC's defense stunk in that game too. If I remember correctly, I think USC had 500 plus yards in that game. BC's defense in this game was equally as bad, but they couldn't make that one stop. They couldn't make that one play that put them over the edge. And that, it hurt. This is going to be a loss that hurts because you felt like you could have won it. You felt like Bill had done enough and these players were still believing and still pushing. But in the end, just another loss. My name is AJ Black. I'll be back again on Monday to talk about this loss with Mitch Wolf. On Wednesday, on Thursday, we're going to have Will Blackman on for our bye week. I should also mention BC basketball won today. We could have had such a great day. BC basketball goes and beats Temple on the road. That was a nice comeback. But anyways, you can follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Follow me on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok. I'm on all of those. Hope to see you all there. And we'll see you again soon for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.